Before we get started, make sure you have the following handy: a bucket of water with dishwashing liquid, cloth or a sponge for rubbing, and a paper towel for drying. For starts, clean both left and right cranks on all sides using the sponge and plenty of dishwashing liquid to make sure that all the dirt and oil residues are removed. Then, dry the cranks with a paper towel.
You'll need the following items from your PowerBeat kit: 2 gluing devices with the sensors inside, these rubber bands, glue, stick for wiping the glue, 6 alcohol pads, a marking ruler for each crank, rubber gloves, pencil, and sandpaper. In addition, you should have protective goggles, bowl of water, scissors, and paper towel handy. We'll start with the ruler, which is used for marking the exact spot where the sensor should be glued. Slit A is used to mark the actual gluing surface. Slit B helps position the crank at the center, with line B marked on the outer side of the crank and line A drawn on the top side. The gluing device I'm holding contains the actual sensor inside a cradle, and this plug should always be in the direction of the hole of the pedal. Make sure you follow the directions and use the device properly. The rubber band handle will snap into these sockets, which applies pressure for 24 hours until the glue dries. As always, we'll start with the left crank. Pick up the ruler marked L. Turn the left crank so it faces the rear wheel, and then place the ruler on the crank with L facing outward, like this. Screw the pedal almost to the end to hold the ruler in position. Now mark the A slit on the top of the crank, where the sensor will actually be glued. Release the pedal just a bit, and let it drop for now. Next, soak the sandpaper in water, and with the crank facing the rear wheel, scrub lightly between the 2 marks for 10 seconds. Now with the paper towel, wipe off any water with a straight swipe, not side to side. Do the same using the alcohol pad, 1 swipe, and let the alcohol dry without blowing air on it. Now bring the ruler back where it belongs and mark slit B on this external side of the crank. Remove the pedal and the ruler. Next, carefully move the rubber bands over the crank. Try not to touch it so everything stays clean and dry, and proceed to glue the right crank. Let's quickly review it again. Place the ruler marked R and screw on the pedal to hold it. Make sure the letter R is facing you, and mark the 2 A slits. This is where the sensor is glued. Loosen the pedal, let the ruler drop, soak the sandpaper in water, and scrub lightly for 10 seconds. Now dry once with a paper towel, and then with a new alcohol pad. Let the alcohol dry without blowing air on it. Mark the B slit on this other side, and remove the pedal and the ruler from the crank. Next, carefully move the rubber bands over the crank. Try not to touch it so everything stays clean and dry. Let's now do a dry run of the gluing procedure without any glue. But first, when it comes to situating the sensor in its position, it's crucial that you follow these 3 rules. Rule 1. The sensor should be glued on the topmost part of the crank arm, when the crank is pointing towards the rear of the bike. Rule 2. When glued, the sensor should be aligned straight in the center, so not to the left, right, or diagonally, but straight in the middle, like this. And Rule 3. When glued, the silver side of the sensor should have full contact with the crank arm surface. Now remember that the plug is always facing the direction of the pedal hole when the crank is turned back. Go back to the left crank. Place the device so the groovy line marking the center of the sensor is aligned with line B. Then place the device in such a way that your left-hand thumb is holding it in the center, and then let your right thumb hold the device by applying some pressure on the handle. Finally, with your free hand, bring the first rubber band into the socket next to your right thumb, and then the second rubber band goes into the second socket like this. Make sure that the rubber bands are parallel and well aligned. Don't worry if you need to make small adjustments. Just make sure the 3 rules mentioned earlier are applied. That the sensor is glued on top, aligned in the center, with the silver side having full contact. Now, place the rubber bands back where they were with your thumb still on the handle, and remove the gluing device. Great! We're now ready for the real deal with the glue. So let's put on our goggles and gloves. Now, this is the catch. From the moment we open this packet of glue, we have 10 minutes to glue both right and left sensors. Just don't plan on taking any breaks in between cranks. Now, take a new alcohol pad and clean the left crank once, only in one direction. Take another alcohol pad, place it on a clean surface, and while holding the device on its handle, wipe the silver side across the pad one time. Let the sensor dry until the alcohol completely evaporates. Now open the packet of glue. Remember, this is where our 10-minute countdown begins. Hold the packet in one hand and remove the handle with the other hand. Don't worry if it takes a little force. On your clean surface, slide the handle across from one side to the other while applying some pressure and dragging the glue with you. Do so about 10 times until the glue is nice and mixed.
You can also use a corner of a table to mix the glue, like this.
Now with all the glue on one side, cut the packet in half and pour out half like this. Next, hold the sensor handle and spread a very thin layer of glue across the silver side using the stick. Make sure the left crank is facing the rear of the bike. Place the gluing device in such a way that the B line is perfectly aligned with the narrow groove that marks the center of the sensor. Now make sure the 3 rules apply. Sensor on top, aligned in the middle, with full contact against the surface. Just like this. It's okay to move it a bit for adjustments. When you're finished adjusting the position, apply pressure right at the center for 10 seconds. And then release your finger. Now we're ready to proceed with gluing the right sensor. I'll run through it quickly, though it's basically the same procedure. First, we turn the crank back. The crank should already be clean from before, with the 2 bands around it at the end. Now take a new alcohol pad and wipe it once across the gluing area. And with another alcohol pad, clean the right sensor by sliding it once over the pad. Let the sensor dry until the alcohol completely evaporates. Now we take the stick with the glue on it and spread a thin and consistent layer on the silver side of the sensor and place the device so that its center mark is aligned with line B. The plug should be in the direction of the rear wheel. Now we place our right thumb on the center of the device and then the left thumb holds it on its handle while the right hand places the rubber bands in their appropriate sockets. You can move it around a bit for the perfect fit, with line B aligned with the center groove. If you need to make any adjustments after the rubber bands are in place, hold the device on its handle and move it a bit with the other hand. When you're done, press in the middle for 10 seconds and let go. That's it, you're done gluing the sensors. Now just leave it untouched to dry for 24 hours. On a final note, we recommend drying it even longer if your room temperature is below 25 degrees Celsius or 77 Fahrenheit. You can get more details in the user manual.
Don't worry, we'll alert you when the time's up. So go out and have some fun without your bike, as hard as it may be. And one last thing, now's the time to charge your comp units, so they'll be ready for installation and calibration tomorrow.